Kathmandu, Nepal. A narrow valley surrounded by jagged peaks and clouded skies. At 2,000 feet above the ground, a Bombardier Dash-8 Q400 is descending far too steeply. Off course, out of alignment, and dangerously unstable. Inside the cockpit, tension is rising. The captain is agitated, distracted, and unresponsive. The first officer calls out again and again, trying to confirm their position, their runway, their path. No reply. The aircraft veers left, away from the cleared runway. Below, there's no flat ground, no safe landing zone, just homes, hills, and heartbreak waiting to happen. This is inside aero disasters, and this is the unraveling of US-Bangla Airlines Flight 211. March 12, 2018. US-Bangla Airlines Flight 211 departs Hazrat Shahjalal International Airport in Dhaka, Bangladesh. The aircraft, a Bombardier Dash-8 Q400. On board are 67 passengers and 4 crew, bound for Kathmandu, Nepal. Captain Abid Sultan, a seasoned pilot with over 2 decades of flying experience, is in command. First Officer Prithula Rashid, relatively new and still gaining route familiarity, is the pilot monitoring. From the outset, cockpit discipline begins to erode. Shortly after takeoff, the captain initiates a tense exchange over company fuel reporting procedures, while the aircraft is still climbing. This moment violates sterile cockpit protocol, which strictly prohibits non-operational communication during critical flight phases. The lapse may seem minor, but in aviation, discipline lapses compound. As the flight levels off, visibility along the route begins to deteriorate. Weather reports forecast thunderstorms near Kathmandu and overcast conditions across the valley. Yet the crew proceeds without meaningful changes to their arrival strategy. No detailed approach briefing, no contingency planning. Instead, Captain Sultan relies on familiarity. He's flown to Kathmandu before. But that confidence masks a dangerous oversight. Kathmandu's terrain demands precision. The airport lies in a bowl-shaped valley, flanked by mountainous terrain on all sides. Approaches must be exact, especially under low visibility conditions. But inside the cockpit of Flight 211, the fundamentals are missing. The captain does not walk through the approach plate or vertical profile. No landing minimums are confirmed, and the first officer, unfamiliar with the nuances of Kathmandu's topography, follows his lead without challenge. As Flight 211 enters Nepalese airspace, conditions worsen rapidly. Thick cloud cover drapes the hills. Visibility drops below 1 mile. Ground observers report fog clinging to the Kathmandu Valley, conditions that demand strict adherence to instrument procedures. The aircraft reaches a navigational waypoint known as GURAS. Here, the first officer programs a holding pattern into the Flight Management System, FMS, a standard move for managing descent spacing. But moments later, Kathmandu approach clears the aircraft for a straight-in approach to runway 02. The hold is no longer needed. The crew acknowledges the change, but the holding pattern remains active in the FMS. As the Dash-8 descends, the aircraft follows the programmed path, not the new one. At 9,200 feet, the aircraft begins a left turn, deviating from the cleared final approach course. Kathmandu ATC notices the drift immediately and issues a correction. Now flying manually, Captain Sultan disengages the FMS and activates heading select mode to realign with the runway. But he fails to compensate for a strong crosswind out of the southwest. The aircraft continues drifting laterally, still descending. This is the first major procedural failure, an automation trap, compounded by poor system management and an unchecked assumption that the navigation was corrected. At this point, the aircraft is neither stabilized nor properly configured for a visual or instrument approach. The captain, visibly distracted, misses another chance to reset. Instead of leveling off and rebriefing the approach, the descent continues unchecked. Below them, the valley narrows, and the margin for recovery begins to close. Approach phase. Altitude, descending through 7,000 feet. Configuration incomplete. Position off course. Inside the cockpit, an alarm pierces the ambient hum. Landing gear unsafe. The system is detecting that the gear is either not extended or not locked in place. This is a critical cue. Standard operating procedures dictate immediate confirmation. Verify gear lever position, check for 3 green indicators, and respond accordingly. But Captain Sultan dismisses the alert outright. He instructs the first officer to ignore it. No checklist, no cross-check. This is not a technical failure. It's a breakdown in cognitive discipline. Meanwhile, the aircraft's lateral deviation grows. Still well left of the approach path to runway 02, the plane descends rapidly, visually unacquired, unstable, and with no gear confirmed down. Crosswinds from the right continue to nudge the aircraft off course. The first officer, still in monitoring mode, follows instructions but does not challenge them. Her situational awareness is limited. She is relying on the captain to maintain control. But his attention is fractured, his decisions increasingly erratic. The autopilot is off. Heading mode is manually set. But terrain proximity increases as the aircraft descends through a narrow corridor with no visual contact and no stable reference. In a properly managed approach, this is where a go-around would be initiated. But that option is never considered. The aircraft continues descending, misaligned, unverified, disoriented, and still no gear down. US-Bangla Flight 211 is now within 2 miles of Tribhuvan International Airport. The aircraft is low, fast, and turning aggressively in an attempt to realign with the runway. But it's still not stabilized. The runway is not in sight. The descent rate is excessive, and the gear remains retracted. The first officer begins the landing checklist, but execution is fragmented. Amid the rush and confusion, Captain Sultan prematurely states, "Gear down, 3 green." A standard confirmation. But it's false. He never checks the indicators. The gear has not been deployed. At 1,500 feet above ground, the aircraft is still banking left, now well beyond normal approach parameters. The crew is trying to salvage an unstable approach without adequate situational awareness or proper aircraft configuration. Then, a critical realization. The gear is still up. The first officer notices the mistake and extends the landing gear. But at this point, the aircraft is only seconds from minimums, still turning, and dangerously close to terrain. The ground proximity warning system, GPWS, activates, alerts the crew to high descent rates and terrain closure. It's another last chance moment. No go-around is called. Instead, the aircraft continues to descend with a steep left bank, attempting to force a landing on runway 20, a runway they were never cleared for and not aligned with. At this point, the flight path is beyond recovery. The aircraft is low, off-center, and rapidly approaching stall margins due to the sharp angle of bank and aggressive descent. They are seconds from impact. US-Bangla Flight 211 breaks through the low cloud layer. Too fast, too high, and misaligned. Below, the runway is visible, but it's the wrong one. Runway 20, not the cleared runway 02. The aircraft is banking left, nearly 45 degrees. That angle alone, at this stage of descent, exceeds safe landing parameters. The approach is not just unstable, it's unrecoverable. In a final attempt to salvage the landing, the captain lowers the nose and commits. The aircraft crosses the runway threshold at an excessive descent rate, with flaps extended and the gear now down. But with the airspeed fluctuating and the plane still out of alignment. Touchdown is violent. The right main landing gear strikes the runway first, off-center and angled. The aircraft bounces once, skids, and veers off the paved surface. Sparks trail behind as the landing gear collapses. The aircraft slides across the runway, breaches the perimeter fence, and slams into the open field beyond. A fuel-fed fire erupts almost instantly. Flames engulf the forward section. Inside, chaos. Emergency exits jammed, thick smoke fills the fuselage. Survivors scramble through windows and broken panels. Many never escape. In the aftermath, 51 lives are lost. Only 20 survive, many with life-threatening burns and injuries. The final recorded flight path reveals a clear picture. Severe lateral deviation, improper descent profile, miscommunication, and no stabilized approach. There was no technical failure, only a chain of human errors, missed procedures, and poor cockpit resource management. The approach should have been discontinued. The aircraft should have gone around. But it never did. The crash of US-Bangla Flight 211 was not merely the result of pilot error. It was a breakdown in multiple layers of safety systems. Poor communication, an unprofessional cockpit environment, and neglected standard operating procedures all contributed to the disaster. The aircraft was never stabilized, and at the final critical moment, the captain's decision to ignore protocol sealed the fate of the flight. Had proper procedures been followed, clear communication, correct flight configurations, and adherence to approach protocols, the tragedy might have been avoided. Because in aviation, safety isn't just about making it to the runway. It's about ensuring every step along the way is executed with precision and care. If you found this breakdown informative, make sure to like and subscribe for more real-world aviation investigations, and let us know in the comments, which case should we analyze next? Because sometimes it's the smallest mistake that changes everything.